The Blood of Dawnwalker, the upcoming open-world vampire action role-playing game developed by Rebel Wolves using Unreal Engine 5 and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment. My first reaction to this was, guys, can you believe it? We're getting an all-new vampire RPG that doesn't look like total dog shit. Now, the folks over at Rebel Wolves had a developer stream where they showcased a cinematic trailer in about 30 or 20 seconds of gameplay, but to be quite honest, the gameplay is really just like in-game animations. It's not really like actual gameplay, but it's still good enough. And they promised that they're going to be doing a full gameplay reveal this summer, so it's kind of nice to know that in the next few months we'll get more information and see more footage from the actual game, and it's not just the development team doing this big stream talking about the game and then we're gonna wait 2-3 years to see more of it. So this is more than fine, especially considering that this is a brand new studio and this is their first title. I think the way they're going about this is actually pretty smart and everybody's talking about it. But besides the cinematic trailer and the little like gameplay teaser that they did show, the entire stream is really just them kind of talking about the game and giving us details about the game. So we're gonna go over a few of those. So first of all, it's a single player third person fantasy RPG, obviously. It started development over 2 years ago in Unreal Engine 5. The project leaders are the former Witcher 3 game director as well as the quest director for Cyberpunk 2077. A lot of the people who are in the studio making this game come from CD Projekt Red. If you didn't already know that, it's a lot of the people that worked on Cyberpunk, it's a lot of the people that worked on the Witcher games. So they're not at that studio anymore. This is their new studio, this is their new project. And the Blood of Dawnwalker is not supposed to be just a single game either. They are pitching this as a saga of games. So this is going to be a series, or at least it's planned to be a series. It's going to take place in the 14th century medieval Europe. The setting of the world is there's going to be a plague that ravages the land, there's going to be famine and a bunch of social disorder among humans. It's going to have inspired Eastern European architecture and culture, so like Polish, Ukrainian, Balkan clothing, like all that. It's going to have a lot of stuff that's very similar to Witcher. In fact, watching the cinematic trailer, it has a big Witcher feel. It literally looks as if you had the Witcher, it had Geralt, but he's a vampire. And that's actually what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are saying it's basically The Witcher just with you playing as a vampire Witcher, and that's kind of like what the game looks like. And you know what? Fuck it. That sounds cool. That sounds interesting, but also another thing that's very much like The Witcher is the music. The music that they actually talk a lot about in the stream is very similar to the Witcher games, but it's good music, it fits the world, it fits the time period. The world has also been watched by vampires in the shadows, and they've been kind of like waiting to strike and make their move, and since humanity is pretty much at its lowest, they see it as the best time to overthrow all the kings and lords and shit. They talked about the day and night cycle and how it plays a big role into the game, and how they wanted the world and villages and buildings to feel different after sunset. So it's almost as if you're in a city or whatever, and if it's nighttime, it's like a completely different city altogether. The main character you're going to play as is a guy named Cohen. He becomes a Dawnwalker, which is not a human, not a vampire, something in between. So he can traverse both worlds of humanity and creatures of the night. You fight with swords and weapons by day, and then you can use your vampire abilities in combat at night. And you can also use them to explore the environment and I guess do puzzles and quests and all that different stuff. But they really are trying to go for the day and night cycle actually being a different feel. You know, obviously with getting to use vampire abilities, it's going to be different gameplay altogether. You have 30 in-game days and in-game nights to save your family. This is going to be a part of the story, and they wanted to do this so you as a player have a sense of urgency. And actually, I should say, the way that time works in the game is when you complete an objective or a quest, that's what actually moves the time dial forward. But time doesn't pass in the real world like a normal open world RPG. You can manage and use time as a resource. So basically, if you play the game and you get up, you don't pause it, and you go to take a piss, and you die, the game's not just going to end by itself. You know, like, you would have to actively be completing quests and objectives and stuff in the world for the time to move forward, which is kind of similar in a weird way to the Persona games. If you've ever played Persona, it has the same system, but obviously it's not an open world RPG. It's very linear and kind of like boxed in, but it gives you moments throughout the day where you can make decisions on what you want to do. Do you want to spend time with one of your companions and strengthen your relationship with them? Do you want to hone in on your skills? Do you want to do just some stupid side quests and have fun? Do you want to explore like the dungeons, or do you want to just buy items or go to the store or whatever? So it has a system where time does move forward, and you do kind of have deadlines you have to meet. You have a sense of urgency for certain main objectives and things you have to complete, but it gives you freedom on how you spend your time, how you build your character, how you manage your relationships. Now, I don't know if it'll be exactly the same way as Persona. I doubt it, but it kind of sounds similar when the only thing that really progresses time in the game is you completing actual quests. They said a lot of the characters you're going to meet throughout the game should have their own goals and ambitions, so you never know who's actually going to be really on your side or who's really going to be kind of like working behind your back. Another big mechanic in the game is blood hunger, which makes sense because it's a vampire game, so you need to feed. They also said that if you talk to somebody and if you have gone long without feeding first, you might lose control and eat them, even your best friend in the game. So very specific companions or characters in the game world, you might end up killing them if you don't control your hunger. Now, this is really interesting to me because there was a game that came out a few years back that was a vampire RPG called Vampire. And in that game, there was a big emphasis on which characters you decided to feed on would affect the world and eventually the ending. And it could actually make the game harder or easier depending on like who you're interacting with. There wasn't a billion characters in that game. There was a very small amount of characters in the world. So anytime you did eventually feed on somebody, whether they were good or bad or kind of just like gray, there was a big emphasis on the fact that you're actually killing them, you know? You're killing them to take their blood to gain more power. But in this one, it's not just, I guess, like a power thing, it's also a control thing. I can't wait to see more on that because I really think that mechanic has the potential to really like change different people's playthroughs, which, by the way, they talked about how their main design philosophy for this game is that they wanted it to be a narrative sandbox. So in other words, not every 2 playthroughs are the same. Every time you play the game, it should be different. Even if you make all the same decisions and do all the same choices, there's still going to be a little bit of randomness to the game world and to what the enemies and AI do, so it's never going to quite be the exact same, which I guess we'll just have to eventually see. They also talked about the vampire design, which kind of just makes it sound like it's a little bit like normal vampires. But they talked about the vampire leader. He has a bunch of like twisted religious beliefs, and he's taking advantage of like the social turmoil to turn himself into some kind of like messianic figure. They also explained how he's going to be kind of like an active antagonist. This kind of goes back into like the randomist and the narrative sandbox structure of the game. Basically, anytime you do like certain decisions, I guess whether they're big or small, he's going to react accordingly to that. So it's not just going to be like good and bad decisions or choices within the game. It's also going to be like minute, smaller details, which kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Nemesis system from the Shadow of Mordor games and the Shadow of War games, where there's a lot of like different enemies and there's hierarchies, but there's a lot of randomness and reaction to the way you play the game and the choices you make. So this idea, like these concepts that they talk about in this game with the narrative sandbox and all the different choices and decisions and the active antagonists, it sounds like a lot, kind of like too good to be true type thing, you know, for a big ambitious RPG like they're never gonna be able to deliver. But the fact that they have a system where it's the 30 days, 30 nights, where every time you make a decision or complete a quest or whatever, it's going to move time forward. I feel like the way that's structured is it actually makes it very possible to pull off all these things and actually do them quite well. They don't have to be kind of like meaningless in a sense where there's a lot of them, but they lack depth. This game could actually have a lot of that, and the way it's structured around the time urgency could be the glue that kind of holds it all together and makes it work. We won't really know until we see more, but out of everything they've talked about and with the systems and mechanics, I feel like this has a lot of potential to actually be very good and have a lot of depth. Another thing they talked about was like the vampire leadership and how the vampires aren't necessarily black or white or good or evil. They're more like neutral, I guess. Their main goal is to like overthrow corrupt lords and kings and shit, but also they need to kill people to eat them, and they're gonna like conduct blood masses and shit. You know, like when people say like games aren't really black or white, or it's not really good versus evil, it's kind of like all morally gray. Like I get it, but we've seen so much of that in games that it's kind of just like, all right, like I get it, like it's cool, but it's not really taking any chances. I get it, there's going to be probably like a bunch of human characters in this game that are probably arguably going to be worse than the vampires, which doesn't mean it's going to be bad. That's actually going to be really cool and interesting. That's basically how the Witcher games were, you know? It's like, oh, who's really the monster? The humans, you know? Like, that's kind of like something that they did a lot in those games. So I'm not fully against it. I think it's a great avenue for storytelling and for mixing things up a little, but it's just been done so much that, you know, I kind of just can't wait until a game does come out where there is just like good versus evil, because it's been a minute, but it's okay. It's a vampire game. This doesn't have to be that game, and it does sound interesting, especially with the cinematic trailer that kind of shows this off. But with that all being said, that's pretty much it. That's kind of like everything we've been told about the game. Now, if you haven't already, you should definitely go check out the stream, because it was an hour long. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about every single detail within an hour, but this was kind of like all the goodies. But what do you guys think? Are you guys into vampire games? Do you like RPGs? Do you like The Witcher? Do you like games like The Witcher? Do you like the fact that people are comparing this to The Witcher, which is kind of hard to not do since this is a team that worked on those games? It's very similar in a lot of ways. It really is. So it's very hard to not compare it. I don't think it's really that big of a deal to compare it. I think it's okay in this instance. Maybe not expect the same scope of those games, but I think it's fine to compare, like, well, the music and the look and the aesthetic and maybe the gameplay to a certain extent. But what do you guys think about that? Do you guys like those types of games? Are you interested in this at all? Do you like vampire games? I've been saying for a long time, people have been saying for a long time that it's been a minute since we've gotten a really good vampire RPG, which, like I said, the last good one, in my opinion, was Vampire, which is really good and actually really underrated. You should definitely check that game out. But is there anything that you would want from this game? I know the game's pretty much already finished and we're gonna get more information and gameplay later on, but is there any other type of like mechanics or quest design that you would actually want or expect this game to have? Let me know in the comments. I love it when you guys tell me your opinions on this type of stuff. I usually don't make commentary videos like this kind of like fast, but this is something that I have been interested in as soon as like I heard about it a couple weeks ago. And with all the information that we have now, I just wanted to talk about it. So let me know your opinions, comment them below, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We do lots of gameplays around here. We do commentary videos talking about gaming, so if that interests you at all, if you like this video, check out some of my other videos, check out my gameplays. We're playing Fallout 3 right now. But other than that, like, comment, subscribe to the channel, share it with your mom, share it with your friends, share it with your dog, and in the meantime, guys, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your night, and I'll see you all in the next video.